Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to show you how to bundle and deploy your phasereditor v4 games to the web. Whether you're using the basic JavaScript template or a template that uses a bundler, I'll walk you through the steps to get your game up and running online. By the end of this video, you'll know how to understand your project structure, bundle your game if needed, test it locally, and deploy it to services like itchio. Let's dive in. So when you create your new phasereditor project, you'll be able to choose from a variety of templates to help you get started. You have your basic built-in templates, which will give you the basic scaffolding that you'll need for your project. You have your starter templates that are built for specific examples in mind, like using Box2D or Spine. You have your example templates, where these are example games that have been built in phasereditor. And then you have your templates that use a specific framework. So even though there's a variety of templates, there's really two main types. We have your templates that don't require a JavaScript bundler, and those that do. And at a high level, a JavaScript bundler is a tool that will take all of our game code, every file, every module, every import, and combines it into a smaller number of files, usually just one or two. So if you imagine you're packing for a trip, right now your game project is like a messy suitcase. You have your code files here, your assets, you have some tools scattered around here, and your bundler will help pack it all up into a neat, compact bag that's ready to go. The bundler can also help make things load faster by minimizing and optimizing your code, and in some cases, it even removes unused code, kind of like leaving behind the socks you don't need. So tools like Vite, Webpack, or Parcel are bundlers, and in phasereditor v4, we can use templates that rely on these bundlers to bundle everything up for us. This will typically require us running some type of command through the command line to build our code, and for projects that don't rely on a bundler, we need to manually take our assets, our source code, and combine all this together so we can deploy our game to the web. So knowing how your template is set up is important because your deployments will be different depending on which template you use. And so we're going to take a look at two examples. First, we'll focus on the basic JavaScript template and the project structure there. Then we'll switch over to our Vite template that'll use the Vite bundler for bundling up our code. So in this example here, this is just a slightly modified version of the basic JavaScript template. In this template, we have our base level scene, and we added in a script node to log out a message to our web console. If we launch our project and we come over to our browser, we should see that our game is now loaded. We see our dyno with our text. And if we take a look at our developer console, we'll see we're logging out the message, "Hello World." So for this project template, because we're just using vanilla JavaScript, and with the way it's structured, we could just zip up all of our project files here and then upload this to our web server. However, this is going to include a bunch of files we don't necessarily need, and so we'd only want to copy over the files we actually need for our project. And so typically for our project template, we'd want to include our index.html file. This is our main entry point for our web application. Our source folder will have all of our JavaScript files that we'll need, with our main.js file being our main entry point into our phaser game. And then we'll need our assets folder for any assets we're using for our game. And then finally, if we're using script nodes in our project, we'll also need to include our phaser.js editor scripts base folder here. So now in our second example, we're going to take a look at our Vite project. So in this example here, we just have the basic project template, and we've also added in that script node for logging out a message. So if we launch our project, we'll start our dev server. Let's go over to our browser. We go into our console. See now in our browser, when our project loads, we're going to see our message "Hello World," and we're able to click on our scene, and we can navigate between our various phaser scenes. So in this template here, we need a lot of the same files that we need from our vanilla JavaScript template. We need our index.html page, we need our source folder that has all of our JavaScript code, and then we need our public folder that has all of our assets, as well as some styling for our index.html page. And so one of the key differences between this project template and the vanilla JavaScript one is we're using a bundler. In this example, we're using Vite, and our bundler has already been configured to take all of our project assets and our source code and combine them together into one new folder when we run a command. What this will do is this is going to take all of our JavaScript files and is going to omit anything that's not needed for our final output. So like our scene files here from phasereditor. So now that we've taken a look at our two examples, let's see how we can bundle up our code and then run our code locally to make sure our bundle is working. So first, let's take a look at how we can bundle up our vanilla JavaScript template. So in our project files, first let's make a new folder. We're just going to call this dist. And in this folder, we could take all of our project assets and place them in there, and then just deploy that whole folder. However, this is going to include a lot of files we don't necessarily need, and so we're going to increase our bundle size that we're deploying to our web server when we don't necessarily need to. As an example, we have our types folder here. We don't need any of this code for our final output. We have our README for our project, our phaser editor configuration, and our events.txt file. And then in our source folder, this would also include any files that are generated by phaser editor, like our .scene files here. All we really care about is our JavaScript files. So in our final output, all we really care about is our index.html, our assets folder, and our source folder. Now in this example here, I'm using a script node, so I also need to include that JavaScript. So I'm going to copy all those. I'm going to our dist folder. I'm going to paste those in. And so as I mentioned, we don't need our scene files for our JavaScript code to work. So I'm just going to delete those files from our bundle. And then we also don't need any files that end in .components. Since that's our only file, I'm going to delete this folder here. So now we finished creating our final output, we'll want to test our bundle before we deploy it to our web server. And so there's a number of different tools that we can use to do this, and the Phaser documentation has some great examples that you can run locally. They have examples based on your operating system, based on programming languages you might already have installed, like Python or Node.js and PHP. And then you can also use additional tools like VS Code with an extension to run your code and test it. And so we're going to show two examples. Our first one, we're going to show how we can do this with Node.js and the HTTP server package. And for our second example, we'll see how we can use VS Code with an extension to host our files. And so for our first example, you'll have to have Node.js installed, and in your project source folder, we'll want to go into that dist folder that we just created. If we list out our files, we should see our assets, our source folder, our script nodes, and our index.html page. Once we're in that folder, we can run npx http server dot, and now this will have us install our package if it's not already installed, and this is going to start our local web server. And so now our web server is running with this folder as our root. And so if we open up one of these URLs here in our browser, we should see the code from our bundled game running. And so if we inspect our developer console, we should see no errors, and we should see our hello world message with our phaser banner that our game is running. It's now for our second example. I'm going to open up our code inside VS Code. And so to test our code with VS Code, if we go to the extensions panel, and so if you do a search for live server, we'll want to choose the extension that was created by Rick Day, and we'll want to install that. I currently have this extension already installed to VS Code, and after you install the extension, you should see down at the bottom, there should be this button here for launching live server. You can also use the command panel to go ahead and launch live server. So if you search for live server, we can do open with live server. If we run that command or start that button here, that's going to launch on the default port of 5500, and we should see our bundled up phaser game. If we go into our developer console, we should see no errors with our phaser banner. Now that we've taken a look at how we can bundle up our code and test it locally for our basic JavaScript template, we're going to do the same thing, but with our Vite template. So for our Vite template, one of the main files we need to take a look at is going to be our package.json file. And so inside the package.json, there should be a scripts block. This scripts block has a variety of commands that are tied to that project template specifically. In this example here, we have two main scripts. One called dev, which is responsible for using our bundler to run our local web server and to test our game while we're developing. Our second script is going to be our build script, where we rely on our bundler to bundle up all of our game assets and our project code and create our final output. And it's going to use our configuration that's included in our project template. So for us to create our final bundle, we need to run our build command here to create that final output. To do that, we'll want to go into our terminal and then run that command from our project folder. So once we're in our terminal, we list out our files, we should see all of the files for our project in our package.json file. So now if we run npm run build, this is going to run that build script from our package.json file. So now we'll see some output from our bundler, so Vite for this example, and now it's bundling up our game. So depending on your bundler and what you're having your bundler do, this might take a few seconds to run. Once it's done, if we list out our project files, we should see a new dist folder was created automatically for us. If we open up that folder, we're going to see that folder has all of our project assets as well as our source code that we need to run our project. So we'll see we have our index.html page, our style.css file that's being referenced by that page, And so under our assets folder, this is going to include all of our assets that are used by our game. So things like our images, any JSON files we load, and it's also going to have our compiled JavaScript code we need for our game. So we have our phaser library and then our index.js file that has all of our compiled game code. And so we'll see here, by using that bundler, it strips away all those extra files that we had to remove manually before. So now we have our bundled code, we can try running it locally to make sure everything's working properly. To do that, we'll want to navigate into our dist folder. Then from here, we can run our npx http-server command again, and we'll do our period. This will start our live server. All right, so if we open up one of those URLs in our browser, we should see our Phaser 3 game. And if we go into our developer console, we should see our hello world message and no errors tied to our game. And so now let's do the same test inside VS Code. So if we open up our dist folder, all right, so if we launch our live server, then come over to our browser, we should see our Phaser 3 game is running, we should see our hello world message and no errors in our developer console. Now that we've verified our game bundle works locally, we can deploy it almost anywhere on the web. There is a variety of both paid and free hosting options available to you. Some of these include GitHub Pages, which is great for free hosting. If you already have your source code hosted on GitHub, you can easily use the GitHub Pages branch to deploy your code. There are other options available, such as Netlify, Vercel, Amazon S3, Cloudflare, or even itchio, where you can host your code. And so to see a working example, we're going to take our bundled up code, we're going to deploy it to itchio, and make sure our game works. And so to follow along, you will have to have an itchio account. Setting up an account is easy, and hosting your games on itchio is free for your indie game. After you set up and log into your account, from your menu, you'll want to go to Upload New Project. From here, we'll want to give our project a name. Let's do test. So then for our kind of project, we don't want to do downloadable, we want to do HTML. So now we'll need to upload a zip folder of our bundled up code. And so I'm going to use our Vite project as an example. I'm going to take our dist folder code, I'm going to compress this into a zip folder. So now back over in itchio, go down to uploads, let's do upload files. So you'll need to navigate to where your project's located. We'll choose our zip folder. And after your file is uploaded, you want to make sure you choose this file will be played in the browser. And then there's a bunch of other options you can set for your game. For the time being, I'm just going to change this to click to launch in full screen so we won't embed our game. And mainly I just want to test that everything's working. So down at the very bottom, for visibility and access, I'm just going to do draft. I'm going to do save and view page. All right, so once our page loads, if we click run game, we should see our Phaser 3 game show up. And now if we go into our developer console, we're just going to make sure there's no errors. We should see our hello world message. If we navigate through our scenes, we should see that our game is working. Nice. So now that we deployed our game to itchio and verified that our code is working, that brings an end to this video. So as a quick recap, in order to bundle and deploy our Phaser editor games, first we need to make sure we understand our project structure and which project template we're using. Depending on your project template, it may or may not include a bundler. If it does include a bundler, you'll need to know which scripts to run in order to bundle up your code. If it does not include a bundler, you'll need to manually copy over your project assets and create your own build folder. Once you have your bundle, you'll want to verify it locally by using a local web server. You can use options like VS Code with the live server extension. If you have Node.js installed, you can use the HTTP server npm package. Once you've verified your code's working locally, you can then deploy it to your platform of choice. If this video helped you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out my other Phaser editor tutorials. Got questions? Drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching and good luck with your game.